Good morning, boys and girls. Hopefully, you have been really enjoying hearing about our heroes from Hebrews. And this morning, we are going to hear about our last person, about a guy called Joshua. And maybe when I say that about a guy called Joshua in the Bible, maybe you think of a place called Jericho. I know for me, as soon as I hear about Joshua from the Bible, I think of a song about some walls tumbling down. That's a good clue for the story. But the first question I want to ask you is a little bit strange. Have you ever been in your house or in school or in a building somewhere and made lots of noise? Maybe even in church or in a holiday club? And I'm sure for most people the answer is yes. I wonder, what do you think if I was to shout in this bedroom right now? Would the walls come tumbling down around me? What do you think? I hope not. Well, in our story, that's exactly what happens. And we'll hear a little bit about that now. Our story, like I said, is about a guy called Joshua. And he was a guy that had been chosen by God to be a leader of people. And he led people that we have heard lots about throughout the Bible, about God's chosen people called the Israelites. And he was in charge of leading them to a promised land, to a new place to live that God had planned for them. But Joshua, well, he wasn't maybe like me. He wasn't trying to make lots of lists about what he needed to bring to the new place, but instead he was really good at trusting that God would provide. He knew that God would have everything that him and his people would need. And in fact, he didn't even have a map or an idea even of where the place was. But instead, he just always asked God of what came next. And I wonder, are you good at that? Because when I think about myself, I like to make a lot of plans myself. And quite often, if I'm thinking about what I'm doing tomorrow or the next day, or maybe next year, or what school maybe you want to pick, or what friends you'd like to play with, or what you can do with your brothers and sisters in your house, you probably don't ask God as much as you should. I know I find that really difficult. But Joshua in our story was really good at that. And so Joshua was waiting to hear from God as to what would happen next. And God sent somebody very special to come and visit him to tell him how to get to the promised land. And so this man came to visit Joshua and told him a pretty strange set of instructions. God gave him instructions to come to a city which was surrounded by walls. Joshua led his people to a place called Jericho, which is a little bit different than Lisbon because it had walls the whole way around the outside. And God had told him that whenever he got there, that he would march around those walls for 6 days. Can you imagine? Not just for 6 minutes or 6 hours, but for 6 days. They walked around and around and around and around. And God had told them that if they walked around for 6 days and they brought people with trumpets, on the 7th day, so on the last day of the week, God told the people with trumpets to play as loud as they could. And whenever the people were playing their trumpets, he told all of the rest of the Israelites to cheer as loudly as they could, to show that they were excited that this was their new home and this was the promised land that God had given to them. And Joshua didn't question it. He didn't say to God, God, that is so silly. Sure, just give me lots more people in my army and we'll just break through the walls. He did exactly what God said, and he followed God's plan. And well, of course, because it was God's plan, it worked. Even though it seemed a little bit strange, probably to everybody in the city, they couldn't understand why there was an army walking around and around outside. But Joshua led his people and he told them all to follow God. And on the seventh day, just as God had said, the walls came tumbling down, and the Israelites were able to go in and live in their new city in the promised land. And that story teaches me an awful lot about following God. Sometimes we don't understand what's going on in the world around us. And maybe the news is a little bit scary at the minute. Maybe even school for you, like for me, is a little bit different at the minute. Maybe you're not able to see your friends as much as what you normally do. Maybe even you're not able to see some of your family as much as you normally do. Maybe you're not able to give people a hug the way that you love to do. And there's just an awful lot going on that sometimes we don't understand. But this story shows us a lot that if we keep following God and if we keep doing what He tells us to do, to love our friends, to love our family, and to trust Him that He never leaves us and He never fails us. Just like in the story of Joshua, that His plan is so much better than what we could ever imagine, even if sometimes it looks a little bit strange. Just like at the minute, what's going on around us in this world just looks a little bit strange. So I want you to have a little think about this next week. Can you set aside a time every day where you can ask God to help you to follow His plan and His instructions, just like Joshua was able to help remind his people to do? Because I know that I'm going to try and do that this week too. And I really hope that you have enjoyed hearing about all of the different heroes that we have heard about throughout our Heroes of Hebrews. And we'll just pray before we finish. God, we just thank you so much for all of the heroes throughout the whole Bible that we can learn so much from. God, we just thank you that you never leave us and that your plan is always perfect. God, help us to invite you into our everyday when we're scared, when we're confused, and even when we're finding it really difficult and tricky to follow you. God, be with us this week and be with us in school, be with us when we're with our families. God, and keep us safe. Amen.